You're listening to the Wellness Works podcast with Dr. Kris McClusky. This podcast takes you on a journey of lifelong health and wellness. We talk to top health experts and explore the real truth you're not always hearing about, the options you have to beat sickness and disease. And now, your host, Dr. Kris McClusky.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Wellness Works. This is our inaugural podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kris McClusky, your Metro East chiropractor and wellness expert. Now, when I say Metro East, I'm talking about the eastern suburbs of St. Louis, Missouri. We're actually on the Illinois side of the river. It's roughly 700,000 people in our area. We're the second largest urban area in Illinois. And I have a very clear purpose. It's to help those 700,000 people, but we have a message that we want to spread to the masses. We're talking about hundreds of millions and even billions of people at the end of the day. And so our purpose is very clear. It's to help as many people live as high a quality of life for as long as possible without the use of drugs or surgery. And so what does this mean? This means we want to teach people, and that's what this podcast is all about. It's about teaching people that oftentimes the root cause of human ailments can come from problems within the central nerve system, the computer that controls the body, or imbalances in structural alignment, and thirdly, inadequate body chemistry. So we have a gentleman on the phone that we're just so blessed to have join us today, a very busy individual, Mr. Keith Wassung. And Keith, is a former national drug-free weightlifting champion. He turned to chiropractic healthcare after being diagnosed with a near-fatal health condition. It's a remarkable story. His recovery actually led him to research, write, and lecture about the scientific principles of chiropractic, and this is coming from a non-chiropractor, if you will. So we're going to introduce Keith shortly. I just want to tell my story and why I'm so passionate about getting this message out to people. I was an active child who loved athletics and school, and I tried to do the best in everything I could do. But I was very sick and didn't even really realize it. I thought ear infections were normal and sinus infections and headaches. I was at the nurse's office every day with headaches and thought that those things were normal. And in junior high, I began to lose consciousness regularly, and it scared my parents to death. It scared my coaches to death. I went to every medical specialist under the sun, and they checked all of my body parts, my brain and my heart and my lungs and my liver and my kidney, and everything was okay. They said that I was healthy, but obviously my body wasn't functioning properly. When I was 15 years old, I got told the chiropractic story for the first time by Dr. Brian Hester there in our little town of Harrisburg, Illinois. He began to reconnect the wiring in my body, and within 2 weeks, every one of my healthcare concerns had disappeared, and my athletic performance improved tremendously. So, the fact that I struggled for so many years, I almost felt cheated, not by anybody particularly, but I thought, man, what if my parents had this knowledge earlier in my life? How much better in school would I have done, or a better athlete, or whatever else it may be. So this podcast is dedicated to getting the same information out to as many people as possible. I want to introduce Keith on the line now. Keith, can you hear me?
Yes, great to be here. Looking forward to a great show with you, Doc.
Yeah, and thank you so much. I just want to hit on a couple of things. One is your story and what led you to be so passionate about the things you do. I'm going to share with you guys some of the projects Keith has spearheaded and worked on. He's responsible for transforming probably millions of lives at this point. But I'd like to hear your story about what led you down this road, please.
Well, I'm going to be very brief with the story so we can get on to some bigger and better things. My story sort of mirrors yours. There I was an athlete. I was a national drug-free weightlifting champion. And visually, I was a picture of health. I was on magazine covers. I was on television and things of this nature. But I started developing some health problems, simple sinus headaches, which most people would say, what's a sinus headache? That's normal, just like an ear infection. That's normal. That was treated with medication, which led to further complications, which is almost always the case. And within a short period of time, I've taken 18 different kinds of drugs a day. And the toxic effect of my body, combined with the fact that my central nervous system, the wiring, as you mentioned, was not functioning correctly and had not been for a long time, due to a whole series of stresses and forces, including birth, including football, wrestling, rodeo, falling off the bar, just the things that everyone listening right now goes through in life to one degree or another. So accumulated, uncorrected spinal stress on my nervous system, on the computer, combined with the toxicity of all those chemicals, sent me to a downward spiral. And I spent the next 20 months literally disabled. Couldn't eat, couldn't work, couldn't sleep, was just a walking zombie. In fact, those 20 months are kind of a blur. Had access to probably some of the best physicians in the country. They just continued to poke me and prod me and chase symptoms with drugs. Now, I'm not anti-drug. Let me make a point. Drugs save lives. They work real well in situations. But when you're trying to take a drug to improve health, Doc, it's sort of like cash advancing your credit card to get out of debt. Short term, there's cash there. You go, oh, wow, this is great. Long term, you haven't solved the problem. And in fact, you're deeper in debt. So every time you take a medication, it comes with a price that's going to come back on you. And that's what happened to me. Finally, after 20 months, I actually bumped into a chiropractor and who kind of shared just bits and pieces with me about chiropractic, which my only association with chiropractic was neck pain or back pain. You know, if you got a stinger in football, if you pinched a nerve in your neck, maybe chiropractic would give you some relief. And I hadn't had any of those things. So when he said chiropractic could help me, I thought it was ridiculous. I said, no, I've got internal issues. It's my immune system that is failing right now. And he finally convinced me to come in, and I was very reluctant. But you know what? When you're in that bad a shape, what wouldn't you do? And he began working on me, began adjusting me, began analyzing where the interference in my spine was and correcting it. He did nothing to me other than to restore the way the nervous system was supposed to be by restoring very safely, very effectively those vertebrae that were not moving properly. And I noticed the improvement immediately. Not overnight. I wasn't cured the next day. It was really about a 4 to 6 week process. But my energy began being restored. Pretty soon I could sleep. Pretty soon I could eat. Pretty soon I could walk distances again. And got rid of the medication on my own. He didn't tell me to do that. I sort of figured it out. And within 3 weeks, I'm back at work. They thought they were coming to my funeral. Within 6 weeks, I'm back in the gym training again with very, very light weights. Because I had lost, probably 50, 60 pounds over this 20 months. Inside of a year, I'm training and competing again, doing better than I had 2.5 years earlier. And we didn't have the internet back then. We didn't have Google. You know, we had to go down to the library and dig. And there wasn't as much data as there is now on chiropractic, and particularly subluxation, that's those spinal nerve interference. So I had to dig and piece it together, and I spent months assembling this data. And when I finally figured it out, when it finally came to me, that spinal subluxation, those displaced vertebrae can affect the nervous system regardless of how you feel. In fact, most of the times, they're not indicated by pain or symptoms or anything like that, and that by correcting that, you can restore the body's master computer. I got really excited, and I started bringing other people to him. I started referring friends to him, neighbors, people I went to church with, fellow athletes. And to one degree or another, they all improved their health. And again, chiropractic is not a treatment for what was ailing them, but by getting the master system in the body communicating up to a level, it's amazing what the human body can do. And when I figured that out, like you, no one shared that with me. I didn't learn it in health class. I didn't learn it from my coaches. Didn't learn it in college. I just got really excited. And it is my life's mission right now to share that concept with people, the idea of restoring neurological function and allowing the body to do what it's going to do. And that's really been my journey for coming up on 30 years right now.
Well, that's an incredible story. You know, thanks so much for sharing. And I love to hear a positive experience, you know, from an individual, and then they take that positive experience and they're appreciative of it, but they want to share it with other people so other people can realize the positive experience that they had. And certainly Keith's done that. You know, Keith is an author. He's written many health research reports that highlight the actual peer-reviewed medical research that's out there that validates exactly what we do. Keith, could you just talk about, you know, you say that information's out there, yet certainly the things we're talking about on this phone are not common knowledge and pervasive amongst the masses. So where's sort of the disconnect there?
Well, I think number one, the chiropractic profession has been around well over 100 years, from 1895 on. And they are the largest drugless healthcare profession in the world. But even with all of their resources, they lack the funding and the infrastructure to do the kind of research that needs to be done. understand health research globally is absolutely dominated by the pharmaceutical industry. It doesn't make them a bad guy, but it means whatever information they're going to release, whatever research they're going to do is going to continue to validate and continue on the idea that we can treat health with drugs. So you get something that comes along that maybe can affect that, can affect sales of that. It's not even allowed in the arena. And so we've had to fight and scrape to get even basic research into place. What I have found is most of the great data, most of the great research comes from outside of the chiropractic profession. It comes from medical physicians, primarily overseas, primarily in Europe, that are looking at this more from an anatomy, physiology. And this is going to sound funny. It's like they stumble across subluxation. They don't go into the study learning, or I think that's what they're going to find, but that's what they found. All of the immune system research that happened in the 80s as a result of HIV and AIDS outbreak completely validated the idea that your neck, your spine can affect the immune system. The decade of the brain, which was this incredible 10 years of research back in the 90s, just tons of stuff, but it's in pieces and parts. And I like to say it's like a jigsaw puzzle where all the pieces are there, but they're not assembled. So you just can't walk into a library or Google and pull up all the great research. You got to kind of piece it together. That's really what I've done with my work, and people have in this information age where that information is a little more accessible.
Yeah, that's great. So Keith has put together, I mentioned these health research reports. We're actually going to highlight those on following podcasts. So make sure that you subscribe to this podcast and that you stay tuned to learn about athletic performance in chiropractic and asthma in chiropractic and hormone balance in chiropractic and fibromyalgia and headaches and, aging gracefully and all these different topics, because any experience in life we can tie back to the central nerve system. And there are a lot of correlations that, quite frankly, people just aren't aware of, and they're actually quite simple. So we're going to share those with you. Want to follow up by talking about this concept of how do we treat ailments in the human body, and when is a therapeutic drug approach necessary, and when might we want to look elsewhere? And in my opinion, really in emergent medicine and crisis-oriented care, we have the greatest healthcare system on the planet. The problem comes is when we apply those same principle to lifestyle-based conditions like chronic pain and heart disease and cancer and diabetes and all of these things that we consider lifestyle problems. And typically in that category, we're served well by going ahead and looking at the central nerve system or structural alignment and inadequate body chemistry. And we actually have testing in our office that within a couple minutes can determine how well your brain is connected with your body. We can measure signaling in your body scientifically. So Keith, can you just talk a little bit about that? What is a subluxation? Who should be checked? How do we check? And what could be the implications if we live our life simply ignoring the fact that the subluxation exists?
Well, the subluxation is spinal nerve interference caused by a vertebra that is not moving properly. And again, it's really easy to think of that as a football stinger or a pinched nerve. Honestly, that happens. I don't want to say it's rare, but it's a small incident. The majority of the nervous system can't even transmit pain. So you gotta think past the pain. Sort of like you could have cavities. You could have a lot of cavities for a very long time until the toothaches show up. Same kind of thought process. It's why dentists don't give you Tylenol. And so those subluxations are anytime the vertebra is not moving properly, which affects the communication between the brain and the rest of the body. Doesn't cut it off, doesn't shut it down, but it just is no longer communicating effectively and perfectly. And it's your nervous system that runs your entire body. It's your nervous system which coordinates all of the functions down to your digestion, your breathing, your heartbeat. It's even the nervous system in the womb that actually grows the tiny baby all the way to full term. And so getting your nervous system checked, which is a careful scientific analysis to see how the spine is shaped, is it moving properly, how is it affecting the signaling, can be done really from literally 1 minute after you're born throughout life. I have 6 kids. They were the 4 younger ones were checked at birth. The older ones were around before all this happened. And it's amazing what happens when you check a child at birth and adjust it. And maybe for the people right now who are listening, adjusting a kid, the pressure, it's literally done with 2 fingertips. It's the most gentle thing you can imagine. And so chiropractic works best when you get checked on a regular basis. When you get your nervous system checked on a monthly, tri-monthly, everyone's different there, where it's used as a preventive measure to ensure your nervous system is functioning at an optimal level. That's the baseline. There's some incredible reading that anyone, especially a parent, should read, especially about the nervous system, the immune function, immune development, and how it all relates to that. Kids with ear infections, even kids with learning developmental disorders, there's often a neurological component to it. And again, it's not that subluxation necessarily causes these things, but more often than not, they're a very significant contributing factor. And by clearing them, by correcting them, it's amazing what the body can do when it can communicate properly.
Yeah, that's great. And that's what this is all about. For those of you listening, we just want to get the message out that whether we're experiencing a healthcare problem, certainly we want to make sure that no matter what therapeutic approaches we're using, we're also addressing the central nervous system, because it just oftentimes goes overlooked. It just quite simply goes overlooked. And then also we want to, establish the fact that subluxation most often occurs without a symptom or a condition or an issue. So it's important for every man, woman, and child to be checked for subluxation from a preventive, proactive standpoint. You mentioned dentistry. We take excellent care of our teeth as a society here in America. And we've been taught that from a younger age. And we take much better care of our teeth than we do the central nerve system, which actually runs and controls the entire body. So, we're looking to make a shift and educate people on things you can do to, quite frankly, ensure that you can enjoy your kids and your grandkids and your work and your athletics and all of these types of things. So, Keith, we're about to run out of time here. We're going to go ahead and wrap up. I really appreciate you jumping on the horn with us. What you do is incredible. We'll probably have you back on the podcast, if that's okay, to talk about your health research reports. These are incredible tools to get information out there. Again, guys, I'm Dr. Kris McClusky. We're going to be doing regular podcasts to get this information out there. So, get on the link online and rate and review the podcast and share it with your friends, because you never know whose life might be changed by hearing this information, because we see it over and over and over again in our office. So why should we keep it to ourselves? We're going to share it with the masses, and we're going to utilize you guys to help us do that. So thank you for tuning in to Wellness Works. Dr. Kris McClusky here. We will talk to you guys on our next podcast, which will be produced very shortly. Thank you, guys. Have a great week.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Wellness Works with Dr. Kris McClusky. If this message spoke to you, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and share with a friend or loved one.